Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this public roundtable of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment. It's now 11:20 on June 29th, 2016, and we're in room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building, located at 1350 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. I'm Councilmember Mary Che, and I chair the Committee on Transportation and the Environment. For a moment there, I forgot what committee I chaired. The purpose of this roundtable is to discuss the resolutions confirming Alex Ashbrook, Christopher Bradshaw, Cesar Layton, Alex Moore, Paula Rochelle, Joel Robinson, and Tambra Ray Stevenson to the Food Policy Council. The Food Policy Council will work to improve access to food and to grow a local food economy in the district. It will identify regulatory burdens, collect and analyze relevant data, engage with other jurisdictions, and assist participants in food ventures. Its efforts will help us build more effectively on the progressive and ambitious food policy that we've already established in the district. And I just want to identify some of the people who will be coming forward as nominees. Actually, not some of them, all of them. Ms. Ashbrook is the Director of Special Projects and Initiatives at the Food Research and Action Center, otherwise known as FRAC. That's sort of unfortunate, where she advocates for anti-hunger initiatives across the nation. Previously, she served as the Director of DC Hunger Solutions, an initiative of FRAC to improve food access in the district. In that capacity, she pushed the Council to adopt policies that would improve food security. She served on various district coalitions, including the Healthy Youth and Schools Commission, the DC Farmers Market Collaborative, and the DC Healthy Corner Schools Initiative. She worked with the Committee on drafting the Food Policy Council and Director Establishment Act of 2014. That actually brings us here today. Christopher Bradshaw is the founder and executive director of Dreaming Out Loud, a nonprofit aiming to build an equitable food system through social enterprise. Among its projects, it has supported community markets and urban farms. He's also served as a member of the Sustainable DC Food System Task Force and has experience as a grant writer, which will prove to be very helpful. Cesar Layton is the founder and chief executive officer of Cultivate Ventures, a venture firm and incubator for startups focused on social impact and sustainability. He previously served as the senior vice president for Relay Foods, an online marketplace for organic local groceries. He also has experience with international consulting firms working in sustainable agriculture. Alex Moore. Mr. Moore is the Chief Development Officer of the DC Central Kitchen, an organization that reduces hunger by empowering individuals through job training. He leads their fundraising, marketing, public relations, advocacy, and new project development efforts. He has experience as a grant writer, again, very good, having secured more than $12 million in lifetime grant awards. For his work in food policy, he was named one of the 50 under 50 food heroes transforming DC's food system by Elevation DC. He also worked with the Committee on drafting the Food Policy Council and Director Establishment Act of 2014. Paula Rochelle, I hope I'm saying that correctly, is the DC Regional Director of the Capital Area Food Bank. In this position, she has gained critical insights into food insecurity in the district and into the challenges in providing for underserved areas. She was previously a program coordinator in the Office of Food and Nutrition Services for the District of Columbia Public Schools, and she helped develop innovative programs such as the Eat More Salad campaign that would make healthy food appealing to students. She's also worked with the Committee on drafting the Food Policy Council and Director Establishment Act of 2014. Joel Robinson is the co-founder and vice president of the Green Scheme, a nonprofit organization that engages communities with poor health outcomes and environmental conditions in order to promote healthy living. It establishes community gardens in neighborhoods with food accessibility challenges, partners with farmers markets, and provides nutrition and fitness education. She also serves as a social scientist with the Federal Food and Drug Administration on tobacco policies. I think we should sum that up by saying, just say no. She was previously with the District of Columbia Department of Health, where she developed and implemented evaluations of health programs. Tambra Ray Stevenson is the founder and principal consultant for Native Soul Kitchen, which offers nutrition education and cooking classes. She has experience coordinating community health initiatives with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the United States Department of Commerce. We will eventually call the nominees forward, but I would like first to call the members of the public who wish to testify on behalf of the nominees. And let me just say, quite at the outset, there are those of you here who actually had the idea and pushed me to go forward with this, and I'm just so grateful to you for that alone. And now to be willing to put your names forward to serve on this, I'm doubly grateful. So, to get started, I would like to call our list of witnesses that we have. If you're a public witness, you'll have 3 minutes, and if you're a person representing an organization, you'll have 5. I have 5 people to come forward, but we only have 4 chairs. So how about I'll call, so that the last witness here, Ronnie Webb, is not left all alone. I will call 3 and then 2. Does that make sense? So first, Jody Tick, a public witness. Could you come forward, please? Steve Katz, a public witness. And Lauren Schweider-Beal, DC Greens. Okay, I start on my left, you're right, so Ms. Tick, you're actually first. Yes, once you see the red light there, it's on.
Great, so good morning.
Good morning.
Councilperson Shea and members of the committee. My name is Jody Tick, and I am the Senior Director of Food Resources, IT, and Programs at the Capital Area Food Bank. Today, I'm here to testify on the behalf of the nomination of Paula Reichel, who currently serves as the Advocacy Director in the Partners and Programs Division of the Capital Area Food Bank. So I first met Paula as a member of the DC Public Schools Office of Food and Nutrition's Parent Advisory Board. Both of my sons attended DC Public Schools, and as a concerned parent and as a food and hunger advocate, I wanted to contribute to shaping the decisions taken by DCPS's school meals programs. At the time, Paula served as the program coordinator for DCPS Office of Food and Nutrition Services and was responsible for the creation of and management of the Parent Advisory Board, among a number of other functions. Through her leadership on the board, the parents and advisory board members were empowered to contribute to decision-making, and while the group was eventually disbanded after changeover in OFNS, many members like myself continue to be advocates today. Based on my experience with Paula at DCPS, I recruited her to come to the Capital Area Food Bank in 2012 and have acted in support or an advisory role since her time at the food bank. Paula brought a great deal of knowledge about the District of Columbia operations to the food bank, and as a result, she was tapped to serve 2 roles, the first being DC Regional Director. As the Regional Director of DC, Paula guided the work of the food bank so that it aligned with the unique needs of the district. The work, to some extent, was self-directed, and Paula chose to apply much of that time to understanding and participating in advocacy efforts, particularly those related to broadly to poverty alleviation as well as to specific populations of children and seniors. She also took time to address longstanding programmatic challenges and together with a peer restructured the commodity supplemental food program in DC, of which the Capital Area Food Bank implements. These 2 areas of focus helped her to be successful in her role. For example, after restructuring the commodity program, Paula approached DCOA, the Department of Aging, and was able to successfully negotiate the gradual relaxing of intake requirements for recertification from 3 separate forms of first-hand eligibility, documentation needed every 6 months, to a photo ID needed once per year. This not only helped seniors participate and remain in the program, but also helped the program to become more attractive to community host sites. Paula's success, and particularly her astuteness with advocacy, led Nancy Roman, the Capital Area Food Bank's president and CEO, to tap her to create a role for advocacy director, which she stepped into earlier this month. Paula is a committed, passionate, and strong advocate whose skills and relationships would add a great deal of value to the Food Policy Council, and whose contribution will only grow as she matures into her new role. I have full confidence that she would represent the city and the food bank incredibly well, and strongly endorse her nomination. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Katz?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Che, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Paula Reichel, nominated in April 2016 by Mayor Bowser to serve a 3-year term on the D.C. Food Policy Council. I've known Paula Reichel since 2011 when she was working in the D.C. public schools, and she and her team were looking for people who are active in food policy to come forward and help with her program, one of which you mentioned today about establishing salad bars in the D.C. public schools. And I believe Paula is exactly the kind of thoughtful, experienced, and respected individual within the professional community and D.C. citizenry that is needed on the D.C. Food Policy Council. Paula works every day to improve the health and well-being of D.C. residents by strengthening access to affordable and nutritious food. I'm pleased to fully recommend Paula. The D.C. Food Policy Council will be both a kaleidoscope and a microscope. Paula Reichel excels in such situations. She's really at her best and is an example of someone who learns the fastest when simultaneously facing a wide array of people, programs, organizations, challenging structural and human issues, cultural history, political dynamics, economics, and leadership challenges. Noted authority Dr. Rebecca Schiff has described the role of food councils in developing sustainable food systems as, quote, voices for system-wide changes in governance for food policy and planning, and performing the mirrored roles as providers, networkers, facilitators, communicators, and educators across the spectrum of food interests. The District of Columbia has a history of making a lasting difference in this manner. I don't know if you know this, but in November 1966, it was a group of teachers and volunteers in D.C. who launched a national book distribution program for young readers called Reading is Fundamental. I think you should call your program Feeding is Fundamental. The reality across the country, and especially D.C., is that there are too many different people living on entirely different food chains. Being more aware of these gaps and determining how to close them and why is why we need a thoughtful and innovative advocate like Paula Reichel. Some of today's gaps and challenges are oddly the fruits of the heightened interest and paths to success in food and agriculture. One example is the competing interest of the important anti-hunger mission for affordable, nutritious food, and yet there is a need to promote increased economic opportunities for our farmers. Who would have thought that making farm-grown produce more accessible through farmers markets and CSAs would have become a study in the premiumization of tomatoes or leafy greens, or lead to a new class and cost division in the vegetable and fruit aisles? Only this past week, the Post reported that prices are higher in urban farmers markets. Paula Reichel is a rare individual whose distinctive abilities include organizational intelligence and personal dedication and commitment to helping people help themselves, and I think she's an ideal nominee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Katz. Ms. Beal is next, and I've said this before, and I said at the outset that I wanted to thank everybody here because they've all been part of this effort and why we're here today, but Ms. Beal gets a special shout out because after having various, pieces of legislation regarding food insecurity, food access, the availability of people with lower incomes to access farmers markets, a whole variety of things that we were doing. The Healthy Schools Act, for example. Ms. Beal was the one who said to me, she said, I think it would be really good if we brought all this together with a food policy council. And the light bulb went off, and I said, wow, that is a very sensible thing. And so as a result of that, we did put this together, and so I have to give you, accolades yet again. Now, that does not cut into your time.
Thank you.
You go.
Well, we were actually just saying out in the hall that we should have brought a finish line, a finish line tape for everyone to run through. But it's a thrill to be at this stage, and I'm so delighted to be here to testify. And thank you for your kind words and all of your work on these issues.
All true words about you.
Well, I am here to testify in support of Chris Bradshaw's appointment to the DC Food Policy Council, but before I do, I also want to voice my support for all of the candidates that have been appointed. I'm delighted to say that I know every one of them, and I believe they will all be assets to the Food Policy Director and Council as it gets underway. This mix of community activists, entrepreneurs, and anti-hunger advocates is exactly the formula for creating an informed and integrated food policy in the nation's capital. We have representation from multiple sectors and a range of wards. Most importantly, this is a crew of people that are deeply informed and already working tirelessly to create a healthy and equitable food system in the district. I could say glowing things about the passion and commitment of each of these candidates. I've met with or worked with each one of them. However, I'm here to testify in support of Chris Bradshaw, so on to the meat of the matter. Chris has been an unwavering advocate for an equitable food system since I have known him. As the executive director of Dreaming Out Loud, he plays many roles. In fact, he's one of the few people in the city that could easily be appointed to any of the 4 subcommittees of the Food Policy Council because he has firsthand expertise in each area. He is an urban farmer who tends a growing space at Blind Wino with other spaces under development. He runs and operates farmers markets in Ward 6 and 7. Through his markets, he makes sure that participants in the district's fruit and vegetable prescription program get the fruits and vegetables that they need to address chronic illnesses. Chris was one of the original advocates for the Produce Plus program back in 2012. But above all else, he is determined that our food system be available to all. This is not just about access to healthy foods. It is about access to jobs within the food system. It's making sure that all residents have equal opportunities to be on the production side of the equation, and that there are policies in place that allow residents to enter the formal food economy. Chris is a creative thinker, a collaborative soul, and a committed advocate. He will be an undeniable asset to the Food Policy Council. Alongside these other stellar candidates, I think the council is set up for success. Now it's time to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you. It's very helpful to the committee and then ultimately to the council if we fill out a record about our nominees, although to me they're so appropriate and stellar that we didn't need any supplements. But your points are well taken as well about how the Food Policy Council will have a kind of range of talents and experiences, and then all brought together, this mosaic will be really to the advantage of the people of the District of Columbia. So I'm very delighted about this, and thank you for coming to testify.
Thank you.
And so now, is Xavier Brown here? Could you come forward, sir? And then Ronnie Webb. Uh-oh, you might be all by yourself unless Ronnie Webb turns up. Well, let me ask this. Is there anybody in the chamber who, though not on the list, nevertheless wants to come forward and testify as a witness? Mr. Brown, it's going to be all yours.
Cool. Thank you for having me here. I'm here to support Chris Bradshaw's nomination for the Food Policy Council. So I'm happy to provide this support for Christopher Bradshaw as a member of DC Food Policy Council. Dreaming Out Loud's mission is to create economic opportunity within marginalized communities by creating a healthy, equitable food system aligns directly with the Food Policy Council. Dreaming Out Loud works on a grassroots level to create social justice solutions in some of the district's most marginalized communities, outreaching and recruiting workforce development and entrepreneurship trainees for programs dedicated to increasing food access across the city, including farmers markets, nutrition incentives, and value-added programs. Dreaming Out Loud captures community stories around history, culture, and agriculture within our communities that acts as a way to uplift voices that are never heard. Christopher Bradshaw is helping to shape food policy in the nation's capital, serving as a national example. Uniquely, he is bridging community-based efforts, state and national public policy to develop ways to end hunger in policy. Dreaming Out Loud work intersects within the Food Policy Council's goals to support a diversity of local and national approaches to eliminate hunger, poverty, and social inequity, particularly racism. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Again, I have no questions. I'm very thankful, though, that you were willing to come down here and testify.
Cool, yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, and, you know, having the stage to yourself wasn't so bad.
Not at all.
Okay, at this time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to begin to call our nominees, but I'm going to call you in two panels. And as you'll see, there'll be a variety of questions that we ask routinely of any nominee that once I put those questions to you, then I'll just go down the line, yes, no, you know, what have you. So to start out with our first panel, I'd like to call Alex Ashbrook, Christopher Bradshaw, Cesar Layton, and Alex Moore. And don't sit down right away. Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give to this committee and to the District of Columbia Council is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. So, who's this person? Here's the standard questions, okay? I know that you've answered these already in your application form, but we ask you to repeat them so they're put on the record. So bear with me. And then we'll just go down the line from Mr. Moore on down. Are you a resident of the District of Columbia? And if so, in which ward of the district do you reside?
Yes, Ward 3.
Excellent.
Yes, Ward 1. Yes, Ward 1.
Yes, the fabulous Ward 3.
Good point. Okay, are you currently an officer or director of any corporation, partnership, or other organization in the District of Columbia, either for profit or nonprofit, which is doing business with the District of Columbia?
Yes, I am the Chief Development Officer of DC Central Kitchen, which is a DC public school food vendor. We also hold a number of grant contracts with different agencies, including the Workforce Investment Council, the Department of Human Services, and the Department of Health.
Okay, Mr. Layton?
No, we do not.
Mr. Bradshaw?
While we do not have contracts, we do help to distribute Produce Plus through the Department of Health, and we are working to develop a partnership with the Department of Parks and Recreation to develop a 2-acre farm in Ward 7.
Okay, Ms. Ashbrook?
I work at Food Research and Action Center. DC Hunger Solutions is an initiative of FRAC, and DC Hunger Solutions has a agreement with the DC Department of Human Services to do SNAP outreach and receives funding for that through federal funding, but it's passed through DHS.
Through DC, right. Okay, do you or does any member of your immediate family hold an ownership interest in any firm that is now doing or has ever done business with the District of Columbia?
No.
No. No.
No.
Are you currently a member of any board or commission connected with the district government? In which case, please identify it.
No.
I'm a member of the DC Tech and Inclusion Council on a volunteer basis.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The Tech and Inclusion Council with part of DEMPEN on a volunteer basis.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I'm no longer members of any commissions in DC.
Okay. Do you have any outstanding liability for any taxes, fees, or other payments to the district, federal, or other state or local governments, either contested or uncontested?
No.
I do not.
No.
No.
Have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics for unprofessional conduct by or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group?
No.
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 To your knowledge, have you ever been investigated, arrested, charged, or convicted, including pleas of guilty or nolo contendere by any federal, state, or other law enforcement authority for violation of any federal, state, county, or municipal law other than a minor traffic offense good thing we eliminate that.
No.
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 Have you or any business of which you are or were an officer, director, or owner ever been involved as a party in interest in any administrative agency proceeding or civil litigation?
No.
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 Okay, thank you. You know, and as I said, we ask this of everybody. This is not, you know, aimed at anybody in particular. All right, well, I do have some additional questions, which I suppose all of you might have a view about. We can start with you, Ms. Ashbrook. What issues would you in particular like to tackle on the Food Policy Council?
I'm interested in tackling several issues. One is to celebrate and make sure the amazing food legislation and policies that have already been passed are being implemented and identifying gaps in the implementation. Also interested in this council tackling the intersection of the food economy and creation of fair jobs that pay a viable wage. And I'm interested in making it easier for people to access food in an equitable manner.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Bradshaw?
I'm very much interested in the economic implications of the Food Policy Council, how we can open up opportunity for folks who are often marginalized and face barriers to employment or sustainable wages. I'm also interested at the intersection of race and class and gender and how we can have broader conversations about social justice in our society.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Layton?
I'm very interested also in the food economy side of the Food Council's focus. In particular, over the last 6 or 7 years, as we've really seen the district become sort of a dynamic thought leader in food and the food economic, sort of the whole range of food economic opportunity, to see that sort of fostered through the work that we do at the council is very exciting, as well as making sure that the economic impact of that is very inclusive as many citizens as possible.
Mr. Moore?
I'm also interested in food industry workforce development, especially as can serve low and moderate income households in Washington, D.C. I'm really interested in how we procure food in the District of Columbia and how we can maximize our dollars for both environmental and economic development value. And lastly, I think, you know, the district doesn't get enough credit for being a leader in food policy. And I think being able to look at holistically what we're doing as a community to put ourselves on the national and global map for being leaders in that field is a really important mandate of this council.
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I see these stories about initiatives in other places that sort of trail ours, and then there's nary a mention of where we are. It's dispiriting sometimes, but we you know, shoulder forward because we are at the cutting edge of most of these programs, and it's really quite impressive, and it's because we have the talent that is reflected in this room. A couple of you have mentioned quite importantly, the whole aspect about jobs, economic aspects, but about jobs too, because it's also an industry, so to speak, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. It's not just kind of like a peripheral thing. And Ms. Ashbrook, I really welcome your comments about the idea about seeing that the laws we pass are implemented. One of my great frustrations over the time I've been on the council is that we do, I think, pass very significant pieces of legislation, and then later when we're doing oversight and we ask, well, what's happening with that? Well, you know, we're working on it, we're getting to it, you know, and it just sometimes falls by the wayside. So if there are extra eyes to watch to see that these laws are implemented, that would be fantastic, and I think the Food Policy Council will have standing to do that. Do any of you have any particular notions about how we can improve food access and diminish food insecurity? We have, you know, a variety of programs. You know, in the schools, we have the summer programs, you know, through DPR. We have, we were even working on, and you know, I want to see how it's actually worked, you know, on having children have access to foods via, you know, the backpack approach, you know, over the weekend. I don't know. I really want you to give me your best ideas, and they don't have to be fully developed now. I'm just talking with you here about how we can even do better. I like the carts that we set up, you know, at the bus stops and the subway stations and things of that nature. The extra money for going to the food markets, and you know, but you know, obviously we need to do more, and that's why the idea about bringing this all together. So if you have any observations about that. Again, I'm not expecting full-blown proposals to come forward at this hearing.
Well, I'd say one of the first things we can do is inventory the infrastructure. You know, what do we have already in place that can be utilized to increase the capacity on the ground within communities, and then from there work to fill in the gaps through workforce development, through other you know, programs that find out what we really need.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to agree a lot, I think, in some of these questions, but I swear we will have diverse discussions when we get together. You know, I think this idea of looking at our infrastructure in a more holistic way, because all of our programs that address food, either public sector or nonprofit sector, are in many ways siloed. And I think being able to communicate to residents what these access points are, what they need to do to be eligible for them, and making sure that really innovative programs like Produce Plus, Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Prescription Program, Healthy Corners, the Joyful Markets are sharing information and communicating what we need district residents to know in order to access them in a holistic and integrated way.
Now, some of you have mentioned grant, or I mentioned grant writing experience. Are we leaving any money on the table? Can anybody speak to that? I mean, have we been as vigorous as possible in trying to get grants for our programs?
That's one of my favorite topics. DC's done an excellent job of leveraging the city's use of the federal nutrition programs, which are almost without exception federal entitlement programs, but there are some gaps in our use of these programs. One that directly ties to helping address the demand side of the equation. How do we get consumers to have the money they need to fully participate in the food system? So there are two quick examples of ways that we could leverage federal dollars to do that. One is to take a deeper look at our SNAP employment and training program to make sure that we're drawing down the federal match for allowable job activities, and those job activities could be targeted to food service jobs. So people who are eligible for food stamps and are participating in activities can get some of the cost, including childcare and transportation, covered by federal dollars. So that's a place we can look for more federal dollars. The other is an example of a policy that was passed, but unfortunately still has not been implemented. And that is transitional SNAP benefits for people leaving the TANF program. So during this critical period when a family is moving from TANF to work, you can actually get 5 months of federal food stamp benefits, which typically are at the highest level, by adopting this policy. And it's just been quite hard for the DC government to figure out how to get the computer systems set up to make this possible. So those are just two quick examples. I'm sure there are many more.
Well, you know, you have to push us. Okay, that's your job. That's the big part of your job is to be creative and innovative, but then to push us to see that these things are implemented. I don't have any further questions. If anybody has any further comments, I'll hear them. But otherwise, I'll just thank you again so much for being willing to have your name put forward. And I expect a speedy confirmation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call our second panel. Which would be Paula Reichel. No, I still didn't get it correct. Reichel. No, don't. It's my fault. I didn't know. Let's see. Who's next on our list? Joel Robinson. Now, you've probably picked up on the fact that I start on my left. So who's ever most on my left is going to start out anyway. It doesn't really matter. And then finally, Tamber Ray Stevenson. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony that you're about to give to this committee and to the District of Columbia Council is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so Ms. Stevenson, if you have a statement, we'll hear it, starting with you first.
So good morning, Committee Chair of Mary Chade of the Transportation and Environment Committee. My name is Tamara Stevenson, community nutritionist and founder of Native Soul Kitchen. I'm honored to appear before you today as a nominee of the Food Policy Council. I want to spend a few minutes discussing my qualifications and interests in serving on this prestigious body. I also want to thank Mayor Bowser for this nomination and look forward to serving the residents of the District of Columbia. I'm a proud Ward 8 homeowner and mother of 2 children in DCPS schools, Ruby and Elliot. They are among the reasons I'm committed to improving nutritional access and educational opportunities for all, because a healthy district is a wealthy district. Therefore, I wish to serve on the DC Food Policy Council to create nutrition equity in the schools and child care centers, because our children deserve to live a longer and healthier life. Furthermore, our communities that experience high unemployment rates, like east of the river, should have access to food incubators to become healthy food entrepreneurs, like Turning Natural. And also, we need to create wellness opportunity zones and provide incentives for businesses such as urban farmers like 3 Part Harmony, who are meeting that vision of a healthy and wealthy DC. When we invest in the local food economy, we create jobs, improve lives, and our food future. Before starting Native Soul, I spent 10 years of creating and coordinating initiatives to improve the community health and economic development at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Department of Commerce's Minority Business Development Agency, and the D.C. Mayor's Office on Women's Policy and Initiatives, and at the University of the District of Columbia's Center for Nutrition, Diet, and Health. Also, I've worked in the food service sector from hospitals to retail. Now my mission is to lead a movement to develop the new generation of women and girl leaders to transform our food system through education, advocacy, and innovative entrepreneurship. As the founder and CEO of WANDA, Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture, I created the Where's WANDA series to inspire girls to use food to heal their communities by learning about their culture and other women leaders in the farm to fork movement. Currently in America, we have 2.6% of 89,000 registered dietitians, nutritionists who are African American, yet we suffer the highest rates of diabetes and obesity in the country. Our communities need more food sheroes. Women and girls deserve a pipeline and a platform to educate, advocate, and innovate for a healthy and wealthy community. And as a former Future Farmers of America card-carrying member, my roots in agriculture and nutrition were planted as a 4th-generation Oklahoman whose great-grandfather came from Texas to begin a life as a farmer in Oklahoma after the Emancipation Proclamation. There, my family still own land and livestock and compete actively in the rodeos. For our youth, obesity and diabetes are a real concern. The Baltimore Sun first reported in 2009 on our youth experiencing both obesity and malnutrition, a condition that brings images of starving children with swollen bellies, yet we have malnutrition right here in the district. It means the junk food is today's Trojan horse, filled with too many carbs, sugar, fat, calories, and toxins. Women and girls eat more or don't eat enough and move less. We're sitting time bombs of disease. And the micronutrient deficiency is the new epidemic, which means few vitamins, minerals, and essential fatty acids can be found in our food system, from the corner store to the carryout meals, resulting in poor school or work performance, unhealthy babies, and unfit to fight. And the CDC reported that eating foods with added sugar is linked to decrease in essential micronutrients and an increase in body weight. The DC Food Policy Council presents an opportunity to lay out a framework to address nutrition education, access, and health equity. Our children deserve nutrition education for all, and we need more children going into careers in nutrition and agriculture to save themselves, their families, and their communities. And for the first time in nutrition history, we have the first African American president of the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. Dr. Evelyn Creighton, my mentor who hails from the civil rights era of Alabama, she gives me hope. We need more food fighters, and also we need to shift our value system from a convenience culture to a consciousness culture. If our plate, like our outfit, reflects our values, what does our current tale of 2 food cities in the district say? We need more nutrition and healthy food entrepreneurs and an informed consumer base. That's why I also serve on the Diabetes Committee with the DC Department of Health, because we need more food fighters on the front line, and also serving as the health chair for NAACP DC branch. I'm on the front line and I need more food fighters, and I'm ready to answer the call of the DC Food Policy Council. Thank you again for allowing me to present, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Robinson?
Sure. Good afternoon.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Councilmember Che. My name is Joelle Robinson, and I appear today as a nominee for the Food Policy Council. I'm honored to be considered as a nominee. As you mentioned earlier, over the past 5 years, I have worked on food sovereignty, food security, and food justice within the district. I have worked to implement community gardens and complementary workshops in several communities, specifically in Ward 7 and 8. My involvement and development in the implementation of these projects has resulted in significant involvement in the greater Washington food community. Through this work, I've gained partners and friends working towards the same goal of increasing healthy food access for all. As a partner in these efforts, I was also involved in getting the DC Urban Farming and Food Security Act introduced. And I'm also heavily involved in my immediate community of River Terrace, which is in Ward 7. I currently serve as the Beautification Committee Chair for my neighborhood civic association, and am focused on continuing to build relationships that will facilitate widespread environmental stewardship around connections to health and wellness through a food justice lens. Additionally, I belong to several collectives of Black farmers and organizers, and I am inspired by a passion for promoting health and wellness and maintain a commitment to community service and social justice for underrepresented groups. I received my master's degree in public health from Columbia University, and I'm able to demonstrate how social determinants and systematic factors such as food access and public policies impact community and individual health outcomes. Previously, while working at the DC Department of Health, I developed and implemented evaluations for health programs and participated in public policies related to chronic disease prevention and control. I'm going to say that. While working at the Assistant Office of the Secretary for Planning and Evaluation for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, I was able to increase my understanding of federal legislative process. There, I developed proposals for monitoring health systems change brought about by the Affordable Care Act. Currently, I'm a social scientist at FDA's Center for Tobacco Products, where I work to develop the scientific basis for the burgeoning area of tobacco regulation. Having worked for both the district and federal governments, I've gained familiarity with policy development and implementation on both local and federal levels. My personal and professional experiences have allowed me to gain a deeper understanding of the nuances of DC's unique position and the position of its residents. I believe that my perspective will be a valued contribution to the Food Policy Council, and my professional experiences have provided me with valuable insight perspective necessary to support the Food Policy Council in making recommendations. As a member of the Food Policy Council, I want to ensure that any food policies implemented operate to increase equity in the policy making and policy outcomes, and to truly create a city where health and food is accessible to everyone. Often our food programming and policies are not informed by the people who they are intended to help or target. Additionally, I am deeply interested in working through how our existing food policies will be implemented in practice and ensuring that the information and processes on how to take advantage of our progressive existing legislations are clear and available to everyone. Last but not least, I hope to bring in the voices and perspectives of those that are often left out of the conversations regarding food policy. I thank you for your time and consideration, and am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Reichel?
Close.
No? Still no?
It ends like Reichel.
Reichel. Ms. Reichel.
Thank you.
Ms. Reichel, then.
Thank you. My husband's last name is equally as difficult, so.
We're talking to someone who's C-H-E-H. You know, people sneeze and I answer. So.
I relate. Good afternoon, Chairperson Che and members of the committee. My name is Paula Reichel, and I currently serve as the Advocacy Director at the Capital Area Food Bank. I am honored to have been nominated by Mayor Bowser to the newly established District of Columbia Food Policy Council. I feel equally privileged to come before you today to present my qualifications for confirmation. Allow me to begin by recognizing and thanking you, Chairperson Che. Your dedication, hard work, and vision have been essential to promoting access to affordable, nutritious food for the residents of the District of Columbia. 2 years ago this month, you introduced the Food Policy Council and Director Act of 2014, which I had the good fortune to contribute to during its drafting and in support of which I testified. I feel now, as I did then, that a Food Policy Council is necessary to represent the interests of DC residents and to guide the varied voices within the food system and the government toward short-term growth and long-term prosperity. Through food policy, we can feed Washington, D.C. twice over, through food itself and through industry and opportunity. I am here today because I am equal parts passionate advocate and resolute pragmatist. I am passionate about food justice, about ending hunger, and about the role food can play in reducing poverty. And as a practitioner, I am pragmatic in how I view the approaches, practices, and programs intended to achieve these goals. I feel that this worldview makes me a good candidate for the Food Policy Council, and if confirmed, I'd look to apply it in several key ways. First, creating a climate of openness inside and outside government so that the vibrant voices that fostered the establishment of the Council and those who have yet to engage are encouraged to inform, advocate, and educate. I'd like to apply my career-long dedication and interest in people, food, sustainability, and health to address an even wider array of unmet needs, policies, programs, and new ideas. I'd like to strengthen the communication among stakeholders, resulting in the best policies and programs, budgets and funding, and oversight and evaluation. Since receiving my master's degree in public administration at Cornell University, my career has focused on how food and nutrition can be used as a tool to create, heal, and empower low-income communities. And for the past 7 years, I have been committed to reducing poverty in Washington, D.C. by creating community food security, primarily from the vantage point of positions inside and outside government focused on large-scale systems change. After spending a year working in the Office of the Chief Operating Officer at the D.C. Public Schools, I spent the next 2.5 in the Office of Food and Nutrition. There, I identified opportunities to expand access to school meals and secured the award of the Community Eligibility Pilot that enabled the majority of DCPS schools to serve universally free meals while increasing revenue to the district. I also oversaw much of the implementation of breakfast in the classroom, grab-and-go breakfast, and expanded after-school supper, all supported by the DC Healthy Schools Act. Moving to the Capital Area Food Bank, where I work today, I have been fortunate to be involved in the process of identifying and filling gaps in the hunger safety net in Washington, D.C. by creating non-traditional food assistance partnerships, placing community-centric tailored food access programs, and advocating for policies and practices which enhance food security and food access. These efforts have led to visible action and results, including the Department of Health embracing the Joyful Food Market program as a part of a broader food access strategy, and the Office on Aging reducing barriers to access for its senior nutrition programs. As the new Director of Advocacy at the Food Bank, I am working to shape policies and priorities and achieve the long-term support needed to erode the root causes of hunger while increasing food access across the greater Washington region. These efforts will overlap with the Food Policy Council and will impact the 444 community-based organizations that are food bank partners, as well as the 540,000 individuals who receive food and services. These career experiences, together with lessons learned from so many people, many of which are here today, have shaped some ideas that I hope the DC Food Policy Council will consider. First, I'd like to identify ways to make healthy food universally more accessible and affordable while maximizing participation in federal nutrition programs. For example, for 2 years, the USDA has funded projects to increase fruit and vegetable purchases with SNAP dollars. Model projects include cost offsets using SNAP, or Fresh Direct's EBT pilot in New York City, which delivers groceries on demand without any additional fees and particularly benefits residents who are homebound, disabled, or lack access to traditional brick-and-mortar grocery stores. In the area of food waste, recovery, and wellness, I'd like to evaluate policies impacting food producers, distributors, and end users that reduce food waste while improving the quality of the overall food stream. The goal of recovering more food must not be at odds with the goal of increasing overall health and wellness. I'd like to capitalize on the network of healthcare providers that are incentivized to reduce readmissions and can utilize healthy food as a simple and affordable preventative health measure. Food distribution in tandem with food security screens at intake at healthcare practices can target resources to those most at risk and eliminate the untenable choice many face between paying for food and paying for medicine. Finally, I'd like to target resources. Children, seniors, and caregivers should be given priority based on level of need, and we know that work must be coordinated across agencies and aligned to truly affect outcomes. In closing, I believe that my skills, abilities, and experience, together with my commitment to the community and passion for its well-being, will make me an effective member of the DC Food Policy Council. I thank you so much for your consideration and look forward to any questions.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm just amazed at how we have been able to meld together all of you with all of your talents and to enlist you in this effort. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for that. Now, I have to put you through your paces on these standard questions, so if you'll forgive me, I'm going to ask them. We'll go right down the row, starting with Ms. Stevenson, then we'll do the next ones. But you saw the dry run that we had there for you. Are you a resident of the District of Columbia, and if so, in which ward of the district do you reside?
Yes, Ward 8.
Yes, Ward 7.
Yes, Ward 6.
Are you currently an officer or director of any corporation, partnership, or other organization in the District of Columbia, either for-profit or nonprofit, which is doing business with the District of Columbia government?
No.
No.
Yes, I currently serve as the advocacy director at the Capital Area Food Bank that's engaged in the district government in a number of ways. We are a sponsor for the summer meals program and the child and adult care food program, after school meals, with the Office of the State Superintendent. We are a grantee with the Office on Aging for the Commodity Supplemental Food Program and the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. We're also a grantee with OSSI for the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP. We're a subcontractor for Martha's Table for the Healthful Food Access Grant that was initiated through DOH last year. And finally, we received Community Block Grant and Community Financing funding from DHCD when we completed the build of our new facility 4 years ago.
Okay, and you know, this goes for other nominees as well. Should there be a vote on your council about a recommendation that you think directly affects what you do in these other capacities, I would ask you to think through, if not necessarily recusing yourself, at least a disclosure of that at the time whenever there might be a vote. Okay. Do you or does any member of your immediate family hold an ownership interest in any firm that is now doing or has ever done business with the District of Columbia government?
No.
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 Are you currently a member of any board or commission connected with the district government?
No.
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 Do you have any outstanding liability for any taxes, fees, or other payments to the district, federal, or other state or local governments, either contested or uncontested?
No.
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 Have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics for unprofessional conduct by or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group?
No.
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 To your knowledge, have you ever been investigated, arrested, charged, or convicted, including pleas of guilty or nolo contendere, by any federal, state, or local law enforcement authority for any violation of any federal, state, county, or municipal law other than a minor traffic offense?
No.
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 Have you or any business of which you are or were an officer, director, or owner ever been involved as a party in interest in any administrative agency proceeding or civil litigation?
No.
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 Okay, that concludes our filling out that record. I just have a couple of questions which are sort of similar to what I asked the previous panel, but at this time I would like to note for the previous panel that I did not have them read their statements, but I want to assure them that their statements will be made part of the record. okay? In any case, I did hear from your statements what your sort of main interests are. I just want to also make a couple of observations. First of all, I really love the idea, Ms. Stevenson, about talking about food fighters. I mean, that's what we have to be. We have to be food fighters. And without getting all gendered about this, I do also subscribe to the view that we have to have more women, in these important positions, because not only are we leaving out the best in the population, but we're also not taking advantage of the fact, in my opinion anyway, that if women are in the vanguard, then everybody benefits. But that's, just my probably inappropriate statement. I don't mean any offense. I don't mean any offense to men. They're all good. We're all good. But I do feel that that's important. So let me just ask you, in terms of, the one or two main things you want to set about doing when you're first on the policy council. Again, they don't have to be fully formed ideas, but what your instincts are about where you want to turn.
So I would definitely say, having lived east of the river, that we definitely need to encourage more food entrepreneurship. I think the minimum wage culinary training to get a $10 or $12 job is not sufficient, and I'm taking that from the global perspective of entrepreneurship being pushed in Africa and seeing so many similarities between Abuja and Acacia, that we can learn from our global neighbors how we can make an impact in these communities. So for me, entrepreneurship has to be pushed and encouraged, and provide that training and the resources and incentives of creating those zones, because the business will be done, but can they be done in a way that is scalable, impactful, and sustainable, and focused on health and not fried chicken corner stores.
Right.
So that's one lens. And then the other part is just encouraging young children who have been in the position of being the receiver of information, but put in a position where they feel that they can lead their generation. If we don't encourage youth leadership around food policy and advocacy and education like we've seen with the tobacco-free kids, we're at a loss. So I think leaning again from other industries, what we've been able to do, how can we apply that to the food sector and encourage not just basic child nutrition education, but youth leaders in the food movement, I think is critically important as well.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, I have been amazed at some of the effects of the Healthy Schools Act. First of all, somebody had mentioned something about the breakfast in the classroom. Who mentioned? Okay. So first of all, there are things that have happened along the way that are just astounding to me. At first, we had resistance to that. Remember? Yes. Because oh no, it'll be messy. It'll be this. It'll be that. Well, it turns out that some of the concern, teachers or whomever, staff about this, once they realized that once children had access to a meal in the morning, they were ready to learn. And the effects that had on the rest of the day, all of that quieted down, But this immediate reaction about, well, no, we can't do that, we can't do that. That's why I love you guys, because you say, no, we must do that, and look at the good benefits that accrue. But in terms of the Healthy Schools Act and about, harnessing our children, for their own health, and I'm sure you all have seen this, with our school gardens, it's as if children were estranged from the earth, and now they've rediscovered it. And they're so happy, philosophically, physically, they're just overjoyed, really, to be out there planting carrots. And then, and sometimes I turn up at schools, and the side dish might be some of the vegetables that they grew in the garden, and the thrill that gives them. It's just amazing. So. And also, maybe some of you have participated in the program that we have, when we have a contest where the younger ones, they write an essay about what the school gardens meant to them. It brings tears to my eyes, when they describe that. So, again, all of you are, at the forefront of this, and I can't thank you enough. But if you want to share, your immediate goals when you're first on the council? Again, not that they have to be fully formed, I'm just trying to pull out from you some of the things that you might be focusing on.
Well, for me, I think this may have been mentioned by others on the other nominees as well, but I'm particularly interested in clarifying and making accessible our existing policies. So we have the Cottage Food Act, we have the Urban Sustainable Farming Act.
I forgot about that. That's another one.
We supposedly have like a Fresh Carts Act, but it's not clear how those policies actually are implemented, or how, you know, if my neighbor wanted to have a fresh food cart or sell their cookies at a farmer's market, or, you know, salsa or whatever.
Right.
How do you actually navigate that process or that legislation? So I think for me, I'm really interested in, like you all were saying, we have a lot of progressive policies, but how do they actually work, and making them clear and accessible to everyone is what I'm really interested in addition to bringing in the voices of, I guess, the populations who the policies are intended to target. So a lot of times, you know, we have these great policies, but then the person who it's intended for doesn't know about it. They could have provided a lot of useful information on how it may have been crafted or implemented or worded. And so I'm really interested in helping to bring in those voices to ensure that our policies are created through an equity lens, and that we're not just throwing in a bunch of things that don't actually have an effect on the people who need it the most.
Maybe you could head the subcommittee on implementation, and we'll identify all of the laws, you know, and then systematically with your committee go through, well, are they actually working, and are we touching base with the people they're supposed to be helping, which was your second point. So I think we have a subcommittee chair here. Do you have one or two that you want to identify?
Absolutely. I think I am also share the sentiments of my fellow nominees that we've done such good work here in the district, but I want to keep pushing us forward, and I think we can really think big about food access and affordability. Over and over again in my job, in working with children initially, and then working with adults and families and seniors, universally there's a need for and a want for fresh produce. And it's not just for any fresh produce, it's for affordable fresh produce. So I'd like to see the district apply for USDA grants, for example, that allow us to do pilot projects where we double the value of SNAP at the checkout line for produce, as an example. Or we think about, you know, what some of the factors that affect someone's ability to access food, like transportation, like mobility, disability, and think big about how we can get food to people who are at most disadvantaged, people who are homebound, seniors who are homebound. We know we have a accelerating senior population. One of my favorite phrases is that the gray tide is coming, so watch out. And I think that we really
the gray tide.
We really need to get out in front of it. The second area where I think there's a lot of opportunity that's not currently being exploited is the interconnection between food and health, and specifically food and healthcare practices. So I'd like to see, for example, universal adoption of food security screenings for people at intake with their physician or at the ER, and that those universal screenings then lead to community-based referrals and or to maybe a hospital sending them home with a bag of groceries. These are really simple measures that I think can go a long way in reducing healthcare costs across the board, while ensuring that the healthcare in our healthcare system is more holistic and recognizes preventative health as much as it recognizes how healthcare is done typically today.
Mm-hmm. You know, speaking of that, which could again bring something that may not be connected together. You're aware of Park RX?
Yes.
Where doctors give this prescription to go out in the park and exercise. Well, maybe that ought to be combined with, I don't know, nutrition RX kind of thing, and to prescribe, food and access to access to food. You all are smiling. You have something going on like
I was
that?
thinking that that's like the vegetable prescription program.
Yeah.
So,
So that's great.
It's a great.
And having done my dietetic rotations in the district, I definitely see that there's there's some JCO violations in terms of joint, like a gap in the system that if a person is suffering from a diet-related disease, that they're, number one, not everyone is being seen by a nutritionist because there's not enough in the hospitals. Some of those responsibilities are being shared by the nurse. And also, once a person is released, there is not enough community systems in place to actually take them on. So you have compliancy issues. So looking at that connection to me is really important, and I'm glad that you brought that up. It provides an opportunity of really sealing the gap of identifying who are the organizations that say they want to make a difference in community health and really closing the gap and make the financial commitment and build up workforce capacity on top of providing access to fruits and vegetables that's so desperately needed to help address this issue.
This is wonderful. We're having a mini Food Policy Council meeting right here. But this is exactly what we're hoping to get from all of you. As I said before, I'm thrilled by your willingness to come forward. I expect to move this as rapidly as I can, and I'm thankful to you all for willing to have your name put forward and to serve on the council. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And actually, that concludes our hearing. So we will be adjourned, and the time is now 12:25 on the same day that we started.